Hey there, welcome back. This week, we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to tell you a story about getting to a place of possibility and committing. And you are going to allow this sacred storytelling to transform you. So, right off the top, I'm just going to start with perhaps the most powerful learning I've had. Yes, you've already guessed it, I've already said it. Storytelling and listening are experiential. You can transform your life through listening. These are really strong words coming from a coach and facilitator who swears by experiential learning, by doing, by getting into the body. And what I've learned in these last weeks is who you are being while listening creates the quality of your listening. And the quality of your listening creates the level of your transformation. And of course, it's the intention of the storyteller, me, that co-creates that container with you. So for this story, I'm creating a container of powerful, transformative, experiential storytelling. So I really want you to listen to this, okay? This is not my story. This is your story. Please don't listen to this and think, oh, that's Darla's life, or why is she talking about this other coach, Steve? Listen to this as if it's about your life. Experience it. Be in it. Absorb the energy of it. You ready? So back in January, I was chatting with my friend in Geneva, and he related to me his own experience of watching this life-changing YouTube video called TBOLIT NFL. It is a mouthful, I know. The video TBOLIT NFL is about a life. It's about your life told through the experience of an NFL player and his interaction with the ultimate coach, Steve Hardison. At first, I was skeptical when my friend was telling me, how can one video change someone's life so profoundly? I've had about 10,000 hours of training and development, so my ego thought, I've seen it all. I'm not really sure I believe this. But despite my doubts, I listened to my friend's advice and I followed his instructions. Turn off all electronics, set aside 2 hours to complete the entire video, and do not allow any interruptions. So I did. And I'll be honest, though I was intrigued by watching the video and I had some emotional moments, some of my previous skepticism continued throughout. At the end, I turned it off and I thought, oh, I'm so glad that changed my friend's life. I enjoyed it as well. And I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning and I felt something. It can only be described as emptiness or nothingness. I really couldn't put my finger on it at the time, but in retrospect, perhaps what I felt was the absence of anxiety, worry, and what's underneath anxiety and worry, which is fear. Instead, what I felt was decisive in a way I have not felt since I was a kid. The wild abandon of certainty mixed with playfulness and play. And so I got in the car and I took an unplanned, spontaneous road trip with my giant Newfoundland Thorn Oakenshield. During our road trip, as the miles unfolded, something began to unfold for me as well, but on the inside. It was a personal internal commitment that was beginning to form, and that commitment created a trajectory that has changed my life. During this particular road trip, I also had a second awakening moment that you may have read about or heard about before, but that expanded story is for another day. So meanwhile, my trajectory was accelerating. And when I realized the avalanche that was falling around me was from the TBOLIT NFL catalyst, I decided to do a little research. And I looked up this guy, Steve Hardison. I was astounded to learn he only coaches from his home office in Arizona. His clients fly to him from all over the world, and they pay $200,000 a year to coach with him. At the time, that felt unimaginable to me. I could not even fathom something like this. I thought to myself, that's something for high rollers like his NFL clients or billionaires or CEOs. And yet, the sleeping dragon within me was awakening. At around this time, I was also interviewing a business coach, Martin Frederick Garbers, for my own business. Through all of those many hours of training in the last couple of decades, I'd actually not ever had someone focus solely on my business. It had always been more processing of the personal stuff that was blocking me and impacting my business self from improving to the next level. So, if I'm being honest, it was a bit of a stretch for me considering investing in a high level business coach. So, in one of my interactions, one of my conversations with my coach, where he and I were actually just getting to know each other, I shared that if I hired him, my coaching goal would be to make and save the money I needed to coach with Steve Hardison in 2024. My coach challenged me back by saying, in the most loving and empowered way, Darla, you don't have to wait until 2024 to work with Steve. You can work with him right now. You can have a one-time being with session. You don't need to sign up for the whole year. His challenge took my breath away a little bit. The truth is that I'd already seen this information on Steve's website, so I knew the possibility existed. I just didn't know it existed for me. And yet I left that call with my coach feeling that somehow, some way this was happening. I was going to meet with Steve. I was opening up to limitless possibility. I was beginning to create at a very, very high level. So at first, I kind of surmised that I'd plan to have a session with Steve for next year sometime when I saved the money. Then I was strategically planning for winter when I would want to get away from the cold and travel to Arizona. Finally, around 12 hours after my session where my coach had challenged me, I reached out to Steve through email and I asked if he had time for a being with session. He responded back within hours and asked me to call him. By that time, I was deadly calm. We had a short chat and set up the next steps. In our brief conversation, Steve asked me what I needed, but I didn't think I needed anything. I was very present, peaceful, and I was just being in the space. Seeing beyond my presence, he pushed back and said, "You know that thing you're worried about, Darla? You don't need to worry about that at all. It's going to work itself out all on its own." I was surprised to hear that because at that moment, I couldn't identify a single thing I was worried about. I actually didn't have any thoughts in my head. I was just really present. Steve then shared a couple of powerful, albeit short, transformative stories and what I will be calling sacred storytelling. They were about things he knew about people that were impossible to know, how he had predicted things to people that had life-altering results. And then he again repeated, so that thing that you've been worrying about, it's going to work out. So stop worrying. And to my astonishment, I realized I did have something that was in the back of my mind, deeply hidden and had been there since childhood, a fear of security of livelihood. I know it isn't logical. It doesn't make sense. I know this. And yet there it was. Hearing his words startled something inside of me. I had this weird feeling of being woken up to reality. Something inside me opened up and said, "Oh, yes, that's right. You've always created security for yourself and done a phenomenal job." Ever since that conversation, I have felt an impossible peace pass over me and have not had a single conscious or unconscious thought about security. The next day, I spoke with my doctor, and you're not going to believe this. A health issue that I had worried about for decades, a chronic health issue, had simply disappeared from my life. How do these things happen? Is it magic? Is it a miracle? No, it isn't. It's very simple, actually. I want you to listen to this. It's about committing to creating the reality we want in the world. This is about abandoning the idea that we need fear, worry, and anxiety to keep you motivated and achieving. This is about you taking your someday dream and making it into your reality now by committing. It's also about being challenged beyond your limits, like my coach did with me. And as you're going to see in the coming weeks, it's about you being and loving, challenging, and believing in others. Remember at the beginning, I said, listen to this differently. Listen to this as if it were about you. You can transform your life by listening. I sincerely hope that by listening to this story, something in you is beginning to shift, something is awakening. And that something is your being, because you have a story to tell. You have a truth to speak. You have a gift to give. Yes, you. What is your story? I would love to hear it. And so would the world. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you back here for part 2 next week.